Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the preview for the 2022 Australian Grand Prix. It feels so good to be saying that again. I am so happy to see the sport finally back in Melbourne. It has only been 3 years since the last race down under, but doesn't it feel like so much longer than that? Maybe it's just me, but to be fair, a lot's happened since then. And a lot has happened at Albert Park as well since the last time it hosted a race. Great segue, Sean. Great segue. So before I get onto the tyre info, weather, talking points, predictions, and all of that good stuff, let's kick things off with a look at the usual round of track stats and some track changes. So last time out, F1 was in Jeddah for another cracking race. That's 2 in a row so far this season. But now it's on to Melbourne and Albert Park for the first time since Valtteri Bottas took victory in 2019. A lap of the circuit is now 5.278 kilometres long. That is just over 3.2 miles and is now made up of 14 corners. There are a total of 4 DRS zones this weekend, and come Sunday, we should see a total of 58 racing laps. For what it's worth, the race lap record for the old layout was set back in 2004 by Michael Schumacher, who posted a 1:24.125, and the fastest race lap set in 2019 was a 1:25.580. Keep that time in mind because it is expected or estimated by some that this new configuration could be up to 5 seconds a lap quicker. But what has changed? Well, first of all, Turn 1 has been widened by 2.5 metres. Turns 3, 6 and 13 have also been widened by 4, 7.5 and 3.5 metres respectively. One of the bigger changes, though, comes down at what is now Turn 11 with the straight a little bit longer. The corner is wider by 3 metres and there is now a more positive camber at that turn. But by far the biggest change comes at what was the Turn 9-10 chicane, which has now been removed and has been replaced with a flat-out burst all the way from the exit of Turn 6 to that super fast chicane that is now known as Turns 9 and 10. The whole track has been resurfaced for the first time since it was originally put down in 1995. I think we can all agree that was long overdue. And the pit lane has also been widened by 2 metres and the speed limit is set to be increased from 60 to 80 kilometres an hour. And all of these changes are the first significant ones to be made to the circuit and the first major layout changes since the track debuted on the calendar all the way back in 1996. Do you know, I'm really excited to see how much of a difference these changes are going to make, but they do look really positive on paper at least. So like removing that chicane allows drivers a long blast more or less all the way to Turn 11, which in theory at least should now be a better overtaking opportunity. And yeah, I get that technically ditching that chicane does remove an overtaking spot, but it's not like we saw a ton of them there anyway, so I get why that was removed, especially if it does help create more chances elsewhere. And the widening of other corners could well allow drivers to make more moves too. Let's just hope it all works out as planned, but I honestly cannot wait for this one. Okay, then on to not only the most important part of this preview, but also the most important part of the whole weekend. Honest, it's time to talk tyres. Sarcasm aside though, this weekend's selection is actually intriguing because for the first time in a long time, Pirelli has chosen to skip a compound. So that means the tyres available are the hard C2, the medium C3 and the soft C5. And that could add a really interesting element to the strategy on Sunday. Who can get that soft tyre to last? And if they can, how much of an advantage could that prove to be? So, you know, late on, let's think late safety car. Driver in P11 stops for a fresh set of those soft tyres. And then with a few laps to go, can they make up some late positions and pinch some points? That's the sort of thing I'm thinking about. Just adds another variable to things, and that's why I like it. Mario Isola explained that the reason for the compound skip was because Pirelli noticed during development testing that there was a fairly small gap in terms of performance between the C3 and the C4 compounds, and so they feel with the new asphalt and the new layout at Albert Park, this weekend is a great place to try something a little bit different, and I'm all for it. Strategy-wise, honestly, I'm not even going to try and guess because there are way too many variables with so many changes. A new track surface and the tyres have changed so much since F1 last visited the track. But I'm hoping for a marginal two-stopper because they do tend to make the best races, at least in terms of strategy. And just to let you know, although it is pretty irrelevant by this point, that the winning strategy back in 2019 was a one-stopper, and actually, that was the strategy that the top 15 drivers all went with. That wasn't uncommon in Australia, though, was it? One-stoppers across the field. So I hope we do get to see a little bit more of a mix this time around. And with the pit lane speed limit increase, obvious statement alert, the total pit lane loss time is going to be a lot lower, so that might just encourage teams to try making an extra pit stop. Track evolution will be high through the weekend, though, so expect low grip when the cars hit the track on Friday, and that should ramp up as the race weekend goes on. And that is actually something else that does help to spice things up quite nicely, especially during qualifying. What about the weather then? Well, it should stay dry across the weekend. FP1 is currently forecast at time of recording at least to have a little bit of cloud cover with highs of 22 degrees and a less than 5% chance of rain. FP2 could be cloudier but is expected to be ever so slightly warmer at 23 degrees. Saturday is actually forecast to be hotter with highs of 25 for FP3 and 26 for qualifying. Both sessions should stay dry, by the way. And for the race on Sunday, it is expected to be around 27 degrees sunny with a little bit of cloud and less than a 5% chance of rain. And your schedule for this weekend is an early one if you're in Europe, and I actually cannot wait because it's been so long since we've had a proper early start, and I weirdly always enjoy them. Plus, Cars on Track is a great way to start the day. That's my new channel slogan. Anyway, FP1 will kick things off down under from 4 a.m. BST with FP2 starting at 7 a.m. The third practice session on Saturday is from 4 a.m. and again, all three sessions are just the 1 hour long. Qualifying gets underway later that morning at 7 a.m. and it's lights out for the race on Sunday at 6 a.m. and again, that is in UK time. And before I move on, I just want to point out this will be the first time we've seen a race held fully in the daylight since Brazil last November. Yes, the last 5 races have all been night races, or in the case of Abu Dhabi, a late evening race that became a night race. And thank you so much to Stuart, aka Chainbear, who dropped that in my DMs yesterday and blew my tiny little mind. I just hope the orange orb in the sky doesn't confuse or concern the drivers too much. It's just the sun, guys. Nothing to worry about. Stay calm. Now, I've already gone over the track changes and mentioned the 4 DRS zones covered by just 2 detection points, which is disappointing. As I said in my video last weekend, DRS works best in my view anyway, when each zone has its own detection point, so that the driver who has potentially just been overtaken gets the chance to fight back straight away. Although, to be fair, I don't see many moves into that fast chicane at turns 9 and 10, so perhaps that zone or another detection point isn't really needed there. We shall see, of course. And if you are interested in my take on DRS, then you can check that video out, and I'll link that on screen now for you and pop it in the description as well. But to my point, with those bits covered, let's have a run through 3 more things to note ahead of this weekend. Daniel Ricciardo is optimistic that the changes to the layout at Albert Park will deliver a totally different race this weekend, and the Aussie, who of course was involved in the talks around the revamp, said he hopes it will all work as planned to help make Sundays a bit more exciting. However, Ricciardo is not quite so positive about how things are at McLaren right now, understandably I guess, and he has told Motorsport.com that he is preparing himself for it to take a while for the team to move up the grid this season, admitting that it won't happen overnight and that, quote, "We are not looking for 3 or 4 tenths, it's over a second if we want to fight for the wins." Really hoping things improve at McLaren and they have a good weekend this time around, although I think wins feel like a long way off at the moment. And I hope Danny Ric can have a good home Grand Prix as well, because from the last 4 races at Albert Park, he's picked up 2 4th place finishes but DNF from 2 other races. It's almost a case of all or nothing for him across his last few visits to the circuit. F1 managed to avoid teams being left without no equipment for this weekend's race thanks to a last-minute change to fast-track its Melbourne freight. Transport costs have been rising recently, and that has led to global freight delays, which has obviously had a knock-on effect for the sport as well, with the ship containing the freight for Australia being delayed by more than a week. But with further delays, a serious risk, DHL stepped in to pull the freight from the ship, which was in Singapore, and flew it onto Melbourne instead, and everything arrived on Monday morning as planned. If you follow MotoGP, then you'll know that the sport had to abandon Friday running in Argentina due to delays in equipment making its way to the country. It did all arrive in the end, though, and fortunately for F1 anyway, everything is now at the track and ready for this weekend. And finally, Sebastian Vettel will return to the cockpit of his Aston Martin in Australia and get to race it for the first time in 2022. Aston confirmed last week that Vettel is now fit to race, and that obviously means Nico Hülkenberg will return to his reserve driver duties. Seb says that arriving late for the season start feels a bit like being late for school, and he is really keen to get back out on track again. He also added that following nearly a month out of the car, it's going to be important for him to learn throughout all the practice sessions in Australia, and he is hopeful the team can take a few steps forwards at Albert Park, a race he described as, quote, "usually an exciting and unpredictable one." On top of that, Mick Schumacher will also be back behind the wheel of his Haas on Sunday after missing the race in Jeddah following that huge crash during qualifying. Before I get onto my predictions then, it is time to do the flashback powered by Motorsport Images. And honestly, there are so many Albert Park stories to pick from. Brawn's 1-2 in 2009, for example. Brundle's horror crash at turn 3 in 1996. Bottas's To Whom It May Concern in 2019. And what about Raikkonen's win for Lotus in 2013? But I've gone for something I always remember when we get to the Australian Grand Prix weekend. McLaren's controversial 1-2 in 1998. Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard utterly dominated at Albert Park that year, locking out the front row by 7.5 tenths from Michael Schumacher. And in the race, they went on to lap everyone up to and including third place Heinz-Harald Frentzen. The dominant victory, though, was hit with a little bit of controversy, as I'm sure some of you will remember. Prior to the race, it was agreed between the drivers and Ron Dennis that whoever reached the first corner first would be allowed to take the win unchallenged due to concerns over reliability following testing, at least according to David Coulthard. Hakkinen made it to the first corner in front and went on to lead his teammate for much of the race. However, on lap 36, the Finn entered the pits unexpectedly, having apparently misheard a radio call from the team, although Ron Dennis would go on to say many years later that someone had actually broken into the McLaren radio system. Whatever the reason, though, Coulthard eventually ended up in the lead following all the stops, but as per their pre-race agreement, the Scot slowed late on in the race to allow Hakkinen back past, and he went on to lead home a McLaren 1-2. Once the agreement was revealed, complaints were made and it all eventually ended up at the World Motorsport Council, which these things tend to do, of course. But the council did not take any action on that occasion, but did warn that should it happen again, it would not go unpunished. As a Michael Schumacher fan, I was busy sulking because his engine had blown up and he'd obviously therefore retired. But I still vividly remember the controversy around that and the fuss it kicked up, and that on top of how everything fell apart for McLaren a year later at the same track, something which gave Eddie Irvine his first victory, are two of the main Albert Park stories I will always remember and always revisit. Right then, time for some predictions. As always, don't take these too seriously, they are just a little bit of fun, and if you disagree with my picks, then you can let me know yours in the comment section down below. Once again, my predictions last time out weren't great, but they weren't terrible either, to be fair. I was wrong about pole position, but I don't think many expect to see Checo bang that lap in. What a lap it was. However, I did get the top 3 right and in the correct order. Miracle of miracles. This time around, though, I'm going to be honest, I'm really struggling. It seems so close between Red Bull and Ferrari, and the circuit has changed so much since 2019. I mean, the whole bloody world has changed since the last time F1 raced in Australia, but let's not get into that. But with the gap between the top 2 and the rest of the field being quite big, this is probably a fight between those 2 teams again for the win, but it's one of those that probably could go either way. But I'm going to go with some very similar predictions to the last race. So that new run from turn 6 to turn 9 could, based on what we saw in Jeddah at least, really benefit Red Bull. And that's why I'm going to go for a Verstappen pole position on Saturday. I do think the track changes will help with the racing, but I still think overtaking is going to be tough. So I'm going to stick with Max for the win. Although, do you know, it would be really cool to see Sainz versus Perez for victory, but I think it will be between Max and Charles again. So Leclerc P2, but I'll put Perez P3 to mix it up a little bit compared to my predictions last time. My outsiders for a podium are Mercedes, and I'm even going to go as far as to say that if we get some late drama or even a late safety car, like we were saying earlier, which allows one of them to stick on a set of those softs and go for it with a few laps to go, that George Russell will nick a podium finish in the end. That all feels a little bit safe, you know? But I'm not going to go wild and make some nonsense up like Latifi for the win just for the lols. I will, though, say double points finish for Haas, and we will have a total of 18 cars finishing on Sunday. And if you would like an outsider for what you could call a shock points finish, let's say Vettel drags at Aston into the top 10 with some help from a little bit of drama ahead. Before I go, though, I do just want to kind of, I guess, get this off my chest a little bit. And maybe I'm not alone in this, but something feels weird about this weekend. It's a good weird, and I think it's because the last time F1 was at the track, everything went to hell, let's be honest. The race was postponed, much of the world was plunged into lockdowns, and the season was pushed back to July. So seeing F1 back in Australia feels a little bit more special this year than usual, and almost like it's the end of the chapter that was the last 2 years. The sport has come full circle, I guess is another way to put it. I can't really explain it very well, but I hope some of you do get what I mean on that one. Something just feels different this weekend. Anyway, that is it for the Australian Grand Prix preview then, but you can, as always, let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comments section down below. Now, I will be back soon with another video, and don't forget to join me live after the race on Sunday for the usual reaction stream. I might be solo for that one, not sure yet, but I'll let you know. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.